You did everything right. You worked for 40 years. You saved aggressively. You maxed out your 401k, stayed out of debt, and retired with more money than most Americans will ever see. And then you opened your Medicare bill. And something was very, very wrong. The number staring back at you wasn't what your neighbor pays. It wasn't what your brother-in-law pays. It wasn't even close to what the government's own website told you to expect. It was hundreds of dollars more, per month, per person. You called Medicare. They confirmed it was correct. You called your financial advisor. She paused, then said 3 letters that changed everything. IRMAA. You'd never heard the word before, and yet, apparently, it had been quietly watching you for 2 years, waiting, collecting evidence, building a case, and the evidence it used against you was your own tax return. Here's the part that keeps financial planners up at night. Most people who get hit by IRMAA didn't do anything wrong. They didn't cheat. They didn't hide money. They simply had a good year. Maybe they sold a house, took a big IRA distribution, or had a one-time capital gain. And 2 years later, Medicare sent them the bill. That's the trap. And once you're in it, getting out is harder than you think. Today, we're going to unpack exactly how this happened, why it was designed this way, who benefits, who gets hurt, and most importantly, what you can do before the bomb goes off. Stay with me, because what you're about to learn could save you thousands of dollars a year for the rest of your life. To understand IRMAA, we need to go back to 1965, to the birth of Medicare itself. President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Social Security Amendments of 1965 into law, and with it, Medicare was born. The idea was simple and powerful. Older Americans, often retired and living on fixed incomes, needed protection from the catastrophic costs of healthcare. The government would step in, collect payroll taxes throughout your working life, and cover your medical bills in retirement. For the first few decades, Medicare worked like a relatively flat system. Everyone paid roughly the same premiums. Rich, poor, middle class. The rates didn't vary dramatically based on income. There was an elegance to that simplicity. You paid in, you got covered. But something was shifting underneath the surface. By the 1990s, Medicare spending was exploding. Medical inflation outpaced general inflation year after year. The baby boom generation, 76 million strong, was barreling toward retirement age. Budget analysts inside the Clinton White House and on Capitol Hill began running the numbers, and what they found was alarming. The program, as currently designed, was on a collision course with insolvency. Choices had to be made, and that's where our story takes its first dark turn. Because the choice that was made introduced a mechanism that millions of Americans have never heard of, don't understand, and are absolutely blindsided by when it hits them. The mechanism was income-based premium adjustment. In other words, if you earned more money, you'd pay more for Medicare. Not just a little more, potentially a lot more. The idea was politically appealing, make the wealthy pay a larger share. It's hard to argue with, right? But buried inside that logic was a technical design choice that would create a time delay trap with no warning system. A financial landmine disguised as a fairness measure, and nobody was talking about it. The first formal proposal for income-related Medicare premiums emerged in the late 1990s and found its legislative home in the Medicare Modernization Act of 2003, signed by President George W. Bush. This was the same bill that created Medicare Part D, the prescription drug benefit. But tucked inside the hundreds of pages of that legislation was a provision that would fundamentally change the economics of retirement for high earners. Income-related monthly adjustment amounts, IRMAA, would officially take effect for Medicare Part B, medical insurance, starting in 2007. Here's how it worked. The Social Security Administration would look at your tax return from 2 years ago, calculate your modified adjusted gross income, or MAGI, and use that number to determine your Medicare premium for the current year. If your income was below a certain threshold, you paid the standard rate. If it was above the threshold, you paid a surcharge, added on top of the standard premium. The surcharges weren't trivial. They were structured in tiers, and as your income climbed through those tiers, your premium climbed with it. In 2007, the top tier surcharge added roughly $161 per month per person above the standard premium. That's almost $2,000 a year for a single person, nearly $4,000 for a couple. Initially, the thresholds were set fairly high. You had to earn significantly more than the average retiree to get caught. Most people breathed easy and assumed IRMAA was someone else's problem. They were wrong, but they wouldn't know that for years. Here's where the trap began to expand. Quietly, methodically, almost invisibly. When IRMAA was first introduced, the income thresholds that triggered surcharges were not indexed to inflation. Read that again. They were fixed, frozen. Static in a world that was anything but. Every year wages rise. Investment portfolios grow. Social Security benefits increase. Required minimum distributions from retirement accounts get larger as account balances grow. And every year more and more retirees People who by any reasonable measure were middle class found themselves crossing IRMAA's income thresholds without having meaningfully increased their purchasing power. This phenomenon has a name: bracket creep. And it's one of the oldest, sneakiest tools in a government's fiscal arsenal. You don't raise taxes. You just don't lower the thresholds. And inflation does the work for you. For years, Congress allowed the IRMAA thresholds to sit frozen while inflation marched forward. The result? The program that was supposed to target the wealthy started ensnaring everyday retirees. Teachers with modest pensions, small business owners who sold their companies, couples who simply managed their IRAs well. Then, in 2018, the Bipartisan Budget Act made a change. IRMAA thresholds would now be adjusted annually for inflation. That sounded like relief, and in some ways it was. But it didn't undo the years of bracket creep that had already occurred, and it did nothing about the 2-year look-back window. That window was still there, ticking. Let's make this concrete, because this is the part that destroys retirement plans. Meet Robert. Robert is 63 years old. He's been carefully managing his finances for decades. He knows roughly what his Medicare premiums will be. He's budgeted for them. He's ready. At 63, Robert sells his house. The market has been good. He walks away with a $400,000 gain, more than he expected. After the capital gains exclusion, he still has a significant taxable gain. That year his MAGI spikes dramatically. Robert doesn't think much of it. It was a one-time event. He's not rich. It won't happen again. 2 years later, Robert turns 65 and enrolls in Medicare. His premium notice arrives. Robert is now in the highest IRMAA tier. His Part B premium isn't the standard $174.70 per month. It's $594. His Part D drug plan has its own IRMAA surcharge on top of that. Robert is now paying over $500 per month more than his neighbor for the exact same Medicare coverage because of a real estate transaction that happened 2 years ago and will never happen again. He calls Social Security. They confirm it's correct. The 2-year-old tax return is the governing document. He asks how long this will last. 1 year, they tell him. Next year, his income will be evaluated again based on the following year's return, when his income was normal. But that 1 year costs him over $6,000. And here's the kicker. Robert isn't alone. Across America, the same scenario plays out thousands of times a year. After Roth conversions, after required minimum distributions kick in at age 73, after life insurance payouts, after the sale of a business, one-time income events echo forward 2 years into Medicare premiums with brutal precision. The system has no mechanism to distinguish between I got rich and I had one unusual year. Let's look at the actual numbers because the scale of this is staggering. For 2024, the IRMAA surcharge tiers for Medicare Part B work like this. Standard. Income up to $103,000 in single, $206,000 married. You pay $174.70 a month. Tier 1, $103,100, $129,000, $206,000, $258,000. You pay $244.60 a month. Tier 2, $129,000 or $161,000 and $258.30. You pay $349.40 a month. Tier 3, snow went to $193,320 to $386,000. You pay $454.20 a month. Tier 4, $193,000 and $500,000, $386,000, $750,000. You pay $559 score a month. Tier 5, above $500,000, $750,000. You pay $594 a month. That's a $419.30 per month premium difference between the lowest and highest tier. For a married couple, that's over $10,000 per year for identical coverage. And it's not just Part B. Medicare Part D, prescription drugs, carries its own IRMAA surcharge, ranging from an extra $12.90 to $81,000 per month per person, depending on your income. The Medicare Trustees Report estimates that approximately 7% of all Medicare beneficiaries pay IRMAA surcharges. That sounds small until you realize that's roughly 4.3 million Americans. And that number grows every year as the baby boom generation ages into the program and as portfolio values increase. The Congressional Budget Office has noted that IRMAA surcharges now represent a meaningful and growing share of Medicare Part B financing. You, the higher income retiree, are essentially subsidizing premiums for others, whether you knew that was part of the deal or not. You might be asking, why hasn't anyone fixed the 2-year look back? Why doesn't Medicare simply use last year's income or this year's income or allow for income averaging? The answer is maddeningly simple. The IRS and Social Security Administration are not designed to communicate in real time. When you enroll in Medicare, the Social Security Administration needs a finalized verified income figure. Tax returns for the current year aren't filed, let alone processed, until the following spring. Returns from 2 years ago are the most recent complete data available. It's not a conspiracy. It's bureaucratic infrastructure designed decades before any of this was contemplated. Some reformers have proposed using estimated current year income. similar to how ACA marketplace subsidies work, where you estimate your income, receive benefits, and reconcile at tax time. But Medicare's political stakeholders have resisted this approach, citing complexity and the risk of fraud. Others have proposed a formal averaging mechanism, looking at the average of your last 3 years of income rather than a single year. This would smooth out the spike years dramatically. As of 2024, no such mechanism exists. There is one official relief valve, the life-changing event appeal. If your income dropped due to marriage, divorce, death of a spouse, loss of income, or retirement itself, you can file Form SSA 44 with the Social Security Administration and request that they use a more recent year's income. This can work, but it requires active effort, documentation, and knowledge that the process exists at all, which most people don't have. The system's failures are, in many ways, failures of information. People get hit by IRMAA because no one warned them. No one runs the projections. No one says that Roth conversion you're planning this year is going to cost you $8,000 in Medicare premiums in 2026. That gap between what financial professionals know and what ordinary retirees understand is where the bomb detonates. Here's what's darkly fascinating about IRMAA. It's not unique. It fits a precise and repeating pattern in American fiscal policy. Consider the Social Security taxation threshold, the income level above which your Social Security benefits become taxable. That threshold was set in 1983 and has never been adjusted for inflation. The result? When it was first introduced, only 10% of Social Security recipients paid taxes on their benefits. Today, that number is over 50%, not because people got dramatically wealthier, but because the threshold stayed still while incomes moved. Consider the alternative minimum tax, originally designed in 1969 to ensure 155 ultra-wealthy Americans couldn't use deductions to pay zero taxes. By 2012, before reforms, it was affecting millions of upper-middle-class families who were never its intended targets. The pattern is consistent. A mechanism designed to target the very wealthy slowly, through inaction and inflation, becomes a mechanism that targets the moderately successful. The wealthy, with their financial advisors and tax attorneys, learn to plan around it. The middle class gets caught off guard. IRMAA is the latest iteration of this pattern. The truly wealthy, those with 9-figure portfolios, sophisticated estate plans, and teams of professionals, often manage to keep their reportable MAGI below IRMAA thresholds through tax-efficient investing, charitable giving strategies, and careful distribution planning. The people who get hit hardest are often the self-made retirees, the business owners, the diligent savers, the people who did exactly what every financial article told them to do, and who, as a reward, pay thousands extra per year for the same Medicare everyone else gets. Let's land the plane. 3 things you need to walk away from this video knowing. Takeaway. 1. The 2-year look back is real, and it starts earlier than you think. The year you turn 63 is the year Medicare will use to set your premiums at age 65. The year you turn 64 sets your premiums at 66. Every significant financial decision you make in the 3 to 5 years before retirement has a Medicare price tag attached to it, whether you see it or not. Before you do a large Roth conversion, sell appreciated property, take a big IRA distribution, or execute any strategy that will spike your income, you need to calculate the IRMAA consequences. Run the numbers 2 years forward. Takeaway 2. Know the appeal mechanism and use it. If you experience a life-changing event, retirement, divorce, death of a spouse, a significant reduction in income, you have the right to appeal your IRMAA surcharge using Form SSA 44. You can ask Social Security to use a more recent tax year as the basis for your premium calculation. This form exists. Most people don't know it exists. Now you do. If IRMAA has already hit you due to a one-time income event, file the form. Get a professional to help you document it. The 1-year savings can be in the thousands. Takeaway 3. MAGI management is retirement planning. The most powerful thing you can do to protect yourself from IRMAA is to make modified adjusted gross income management a core pillar of your retirement strategy, not an afterthought. This means doing Roth conversions before Medicare eligibility in strategic amounts that don't push MAGI over thresholds, understanding that qualified charitable distributions from IRAs can reduce your MAGI if you're charitably inclined, being aware that required minimum distributions, Social Security income, and even interest from municipal bonds can affect your MAGI calculation. Considering which investment accounts to draw from first in retirement based on their tax treatment, a good fee-only financial planner who specializes in retirement income can run IRMAA projections for you. That conversation, which might cost a few $100s, could save you tens of thousands over a 20-year retirement. Here's the open question I want to leave you with. We live in a country that tells its citizens constantly to save more, invest wisely, build wealth, and prepare for retirement. The message is everywhere. Take responsibility for your financial future. And millions of Americans do exactly that. And then, at 65, at the moment they transition into the system they paid into for 40 years, the system charges them more for doing what they were told to do. Is that fair? Is it good policy? Is it the inevitable result of a program that needs more funding and few political solutions? Those are questions worth having. In your family, with your representatives, in the voting booth. But regardless of where you land on the policy debate, the practical reality is that IRMAA is here. It's enforced. It costs real people real money. And the only defense is knowledge acted upon before the 2-year window closes. The bomb doesn't announce itself. There's no warning letter 2 years in advance. No notification when your income crosses a threshold. Just a premium notice and a number you didn't expect. Don't let that be you. If this video opened your eyes, do 3 things right now. First, share this with someone who is within 10 years of retirement. They may be planning financial moves right now that will cost them in ways they can't see. One conversation could save them thousands. Second, subscribe and hit the notification bell. We cover the hidden mechanics of retirement finance, the things your financial advisor may not explain and that glossy retirement brochures definitely don't mention. IRMAA is just one of them. Third, drop a comment below. Tell me, did you know about IRMAA before watching this? Have you been hit by it? Are you planning around it now? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to finally take action. The trap is real, but so is the way out. See you in the next one.